Okay, so we have breaking news. The Wisconsin judge who actually helped illegal aliens escape from our own courthouse has been found guilty. But the question here is, will she be sentenced to prison? I think we're going to find that out in today's video. But first, please like this video, share this video, leave a comment down below, and please do not forget to subscribe. Let's start here.
The Justice Department indicting 6 more people in Minnesota's widening Minnesota fraud scandal. You will not believe all of this. It comes as the feds say the sheer scale of the fraud is nothing short of epic.
Minnesotans and taxpayers deserve to know the truth of the fraud. The fraud is not small. It isn't isolated. The magnitude cannot be overstated. What we see in Minnesota is not a handful of bad actors committing crimes. It's a staggering industrial scale fraud. It's swamping Minnesota and calling into question everything we know about our state.
Mike Tobin has more from our Midwest Bureau. And Mike, I got to tell you, last night in a commercial break of the 5, we were all talking about this and really blown away by the numbers.
You know, the federal prosecutors, Dana, in Minnesota have been warning and still warning that we're looking at the tip of the iceberg in terms of the extent of this fraud in Minnesota. As you mentioned, 6 new indictments and 1 guilty plea were announced yesterday as federal agents executed a search warrant on Ultimate Home Health Services, a Somali-owned home care agency. The new indictment zeroes in on the autism program called Early Intensive Developmental and Behavioral Intervention, or EIDBI, and zeroed in on housing stabilization programs. In the case of the housing stabilization programs, the Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson says defendants claim to provide housing assistance to people with mental illness or drug and alcohol problems, and they say the defendants submitted claims, provided no service.
This is why conservative values are really effective at the local level because, as you guys know, we're all about the rule of law, okay? And when you have these politicians who are leading with compassion over law and order, this is exactly what you get. Now, we already have seen photos of some of these people who have been indicted taking pictures with the governor himself and Representative Ilhan Omar. That doesn't mean they may be guilty of anything, obviously. But the point is, that's not a good look either. And the fact of the matter is, and if you guys follow me for quite some time, you know how I think the results tell the story. If you have this level of fraud happening in your state, that means somewhere along the line, someone told you, someone reported it, there must have been a whistleblower, and innocent people are getting hurt. And these are their tax dollars going into the pockets of people who are saying they're coming here to contribute to our society.
Thompson used the term fraud tourism, claiming 2 men from Philadelphia learned there was easy money in Minnesota, so they flew into the state, set up shop, and started billing the government. As far as defrauding the autism programs, Thompson introduced 1 new case of a defendant recruiting parents, getting bogus documents for a diagnosis of autism for the child. The parents would then get a kickback from the money intended to treat the autistic child.
What we're seeing is programs that are just entirely fraudulent. These aren't companies that are providing some services but overbilling Medicare or Medicaid. These are companies that are providing essentially no services. They're essentially shell companies created to defraud the program, created to submit on a wholesale level.
Now, the housing stabilization program, for one, was created with a prediction it would cost $2.6 million annually. It ballooned to $21 million in 2021 and exploded to $104 million in 2024. All but a handful of the defendants thus far are part of the Minnesota Somali community. Some of the money did leave the U.S. There were real estate purchases in Kenya, to give you one example. But prosecutors say so far they have no evidence that the money funded the terror group Al-Shabaab.
I just want to break down a couple of points of it. Number one, when you're pretty much telling the federal government that, hey, we have people who have autism on our books and they really don't because you're using people's information. So think about how deep this goes. They're stealing people's identity. Then they're claiming they have autism claims, okay, in order to get paid money. That is sick. And what has been the reaction from Democrats on this? 2 things. 1, silence. So they haven't even come out as a party and condemned this behavior. And 2, deflection, meaning they want to blame the president for targeting the Somalia community. Their words, they say he's targeting them. Well, again, if your community, especially the people who speak on behalf of your community, has been caught up in criminal activity and are taking pictures with criminals, I think your community deserves a little bit of criticism. I think that's okay, all right?
Yes, we're looking into all those programs, yes.
Andrew, as you look across the country, are there any other examples where the cost of Medicaid-funded programs saw this kind of exponential growth? Is Minnesota clearly an outlier when you look at spending on these programs across the board?
I think we're an outlier in a bad way, yes. Have I gone through every 50 state? No, but you don't see fraud on this scale in other states. And part of that is just we sit here as a team, and it's a relatively small team. We're a relatively small U.S. Attorney's Office, and every day we look under a rock and find a new $50 million fraud scheme. That shouldn't be the case in a state of our size. Certainly other states have problem with frauds, but I think our problem is unique insofar as we've just opened the door. What we aren't seeing here, traditional Medicare or Medicaid fraud is people overbilling, upcoding. So you're instead of billing for a service with a relatively modest reimbursement, you claim to be providing a higher dollar value service, and you get more Medicaid payments or reimbursements that you should be entitled to. That's traditional. You may be getting 20% more. You're padding your bills. What we see here, and what I think is unique to Minnesota, is that's not what we're looking at. What we're seeing is programs that are just entirely fraudulent. These aren't companies that are providing some services but overbilling Medicare or Medicaid. These are companies that are providing essentially no services. They're essentially shell companies created to defraud the program, created to submit on a wholesale level fraudulent claims for services that aren't necessary and aren't provided. I think that's unique to Minnesota.
A couple of things came to mind as I was listening to this. Imagine if he went over to California, what he would uncover. I mean, California has a high-speed rail to nowhere, all right? It's never going to be finished. I don't know how many people are here from California, but I'll let you in on a secret. When they start a construction project, it literally never ends. I mean, it goes on over the lifetime of somebody. I mean, I could tell you highways that are still being worked on that started before I was born, and they're still working on it today. I mean, it's craziness. So he's right. A state like Minnesota, which is not a big state whatsoever, so if this is happening in that state, imagine California, imagine Massachusetts, these other states, of course. So yeah, I think that is crystal clear in my opinion. Okay, so I think we could go to the Haitian fraud that I briefly brought up. We can hear a little bit of that and understand what else is going.
Of food stamp fraud. As alleged in the charging documents, these men abused one of the government's most critical safety net programs for their own financial gain. This is taxpayer money meant to keep people from going hungry. These defendants decided to take it for themselves. These defendants exchanged SNAP benefits for cash, which they pocketed. Bonner, a naturalized U.S. citizen from Haiti, owned the Jesuela Variety Store. Elise May, a lawful permanent resident also from Haiti, owned the Saul Mache Mixe store. These two businesses were co-located within a single storefront in Boston. To be certain, these were not supermarkets. They were not full-service groceries. It would be a huge stretch to even call them convenience stores. In fact, the only thing convenient about these stores was how easy it was to commit SNAP benefit fraud.
Exactly. I was just thinking, did we hear announcements like this under the previous administration? I don't know. I think we will do the research. I don't believe so. I think this administration has done a great job of getting the information out there about what they're doing. I think obviously that has made them a victim of their own success, essentially, because the more transparent they've tried to be, the more people demand more information from them. But the point here is that clearly from the top down, they have told people, enforce the law, okay? Investigate, enforce the law, go out there, find the criminals. Let's get a hold of what's been happening in our country. And I think essentially common sense will kind of tell you, think about the mindset from the top down during COVID. I mean, it was kind of like, we're just going to do whatever we have to do to move on or move forward. And a lot of the laws were not being enforced, especially at the border, clearly. So it's just craziness. All right, let's go to, we have one more clip to show you. I think it's a better explanation on the Somalia fraud in Minnesota.
Two guys from Philadelphia go to Minnesota to pick up cash. Was this an open secret in your state?
Bill, we've been reporting on this for years and hearing that the fraud is well into the billions of dollars in Minnesota. I don't think really surprises anyone here. There was this morning warning months ago that an iceberg was ahead by First Assistant U.S. Attorney Joe Thompson. Seems like we're not even hitting that just yet. I'll be honest. We've visited some recent sites just within the last week. Still, it seems, fraudulent programs everywhere. Zeroing in on those 14 Medicaid programs that have now been flagged, $18 billion that poured into those programs since 2018. Yesterday, we heard more than half of that is likely fraud, perhaps well above $9 or $10 billion. But just seeing that explosive growth, I think you can see these businesses everywhere. In fact, business owners in Minnesota are even taking matters into their own hands, Bill. We've done some stories about people actually setting up security cameras, rolling on neighboring businesses saying, hey, there's no kids coming and going from this daycare. There are no adults going in and out of this adult daycare. Will someone do something?
All right, this is just crazy. Because you know what frustrates me the most? It's when these insurance companies continue to lowball everyday Americans when they have a serious accident. What am I talking about? Their pain, the time that they lost, the things that they're going through. These insurance companies don't care about that. They only care about their bottom line, which is why I want to make you guys aware of Morgan & Morgan. This is America's largest injury law firm because they know when you're seriously hurt, that injury could be worth millions, and they're not going to settle for these lowball offers. And if you're results driven like me, pay attention to these numbers. They got a verdict out of Philadelphia for $26 million. That is 40 times higher than the insurance company. Out of Florida, they got one for $12 million. And then out of New York, $6.8 million, which is 25 times higher. You guys following what I'm saying here? You see, if you've ever been injured, don't overthink this. Protect your rights today. It only takes you a few minutes to see if you have a case, and you could do it all from your phone. And guess what? It doesn't cost you a thing. There's no upfront fees, any of that, unless they're able to get you results, including a win for your case. So did you know that you could start a claim with America's largest injury law firm in just a click by going to forthepeople.com/Devori? That is forthepeople.com/Devori, or click the link in the description below. Yeah, I'm not shocked by that. So the journalists on the ground have clearly been doing the work, but the people in the courtroom, they have not. And that's kind of a perfect segue into our next story here, which is about this former judge. She has been disbarred at this point in time. Hannah Dugan, I believe is how you pronounce her name. So, again, isn't it interesting how many times we've been screaming about not only illegal immigration, but then we've been screaming about how these judges have clearly been enabling this process of corruption, essentially. And some people would call it a judicial tyranny, which I don't argue with, because when you hear of and she wasn't the only one, by the way. There was a judge in New Mexico, I believe it was, who also was caught with an illegal alien in his home. We don't know the current status of his case, but we do know hers, and it's a guilty verdict, and I'd like to play that clip for you guys now.
Law enforcement is going to execute arrest warrants. And frankly, in most cases, the arrest warrants are issued by a judge. Law enforcement should be entitled to identify the safest place to do that. And a circuit court building that has a metal detector and security check-in at the front door is among the safest places we can find. I heard suggestions during the trial, well, why didn't they do a traffic stop? Traffic stops are inherently dangerous. You've all reported on the news of traffic stops that turn into dangerous chases where citizens and police officers sometimes get killed or hurt. That's not a safer way to do it. This was the safest way to do it. Like I said, I understand the concerns that Chief Judge Ashley expressed, but in the end, this is a way to do it that is safer for everyone.
Struggling there to kind of just tell us what the truth is. We should not have in the United States of America a judge clearly aiding and abetting criminals. Okay, that's just the bottom line to it. Now, according to Jasmine Crockett, if you cross the border, it isn't a crime. So some people would say they're not criminals. Sure, it's all just petty language at the end of the day. I know for a fact that if you cross the border illegally, it says it black and white, it is a crime. But when a judge decides to take matters into her own hands in this particular situation, the standard for her and accountability should be absolutely high. I mean, I find it interesting that when I was in the military, if we did something like this, I mean, you would have been court-martialed, demoted, even kicked out. I mean, military members were kicked out for not taking the vaccine, by the way. But the point is, it's interesting how the standard for our men and women is different than people who are judges, attorneys, lawyers, and politicians sitting in Congress. And I wish that would change because I think they would clearly think twice before doing something like this. So I think we have another clip to show you on this particular story. Let's go ahead and play that now for them.
Hannah Dugan, a Wisconsin judge who was on trial for helping a migrant appearing in her courtroom evade ICE arrest, was found guilty of obstructing federal agents. Dugan was arrested in April after helping Eduardo Flores Ruiz avoid ICE agents who were trying to serve him a warrant. She now faces up to 5 years in prison on the felony obstruction count. After the verdict, Dugan's defense team released a statement. Here's what it said, quote, "While we are disappointed in today's outcome, the failure of the prosecution to secure convictions on both counts demonstrates the opportunity we have to clear Judge Dugan's name and show she did nothing wrong in this matter." Facing up to 5 years, Judge.
She should not go to jail. I mean, she's lost her career. She's no longer a judge. She's lost the income from being a judge. She will soon lose her license to practice law. I don't know if she has a pension. I'm not familiar with the Wisconsin pension system, and I don't know how long she may have been a government employee, if she even qualifies for a pension. And after this case, the feds have stopped arresting people in courthouses. They now wait till you're outside. So this was a symbolic prosecution brought by the Department of Justice to show the heavy-handed hammer coming down on a state official that they perceived as interfering with their work. I think she's suffered enough. I don't know how the federal judge feels about this, but the federal judge has discretion not to send her to prison at all. It would just be an injustice to put this lady in jail.
I disagree. I think she should absolutely go to jail. I don't care if it's for 12 months. I mean, at the end of the day, you have to set the example. We say that in the military as well. Set the example. Okay, she needs to be an example of what judges need to be, in my opinion, reminded of. Do not think you can get involved in this political atmosphere and do something that could hurt your career and also damage the integrity of the bench. I mean, let's not forget, we have people who went to prison for posting on social media, but she shouldn't go to prison for helping illegal aliens escape arrest out of a courthouse. I mean, how does that work exactly? Listen, if a regular civilian did something like that, they would be in prison. So again, this is the stuff that I disagree with in our country. I'm a guy who likes high standards. It doesn't mean we'll always meet them. Okay, we will fall short. There's no question. But I'd rather shoot for a high standard than be living my life based on low standards. And that's what I see here, even in that analysis, that she shouldn't go to prison just because she lost her law license, her money. No, make her example and put other judges on notice that you cannot do this. Do not get involved. Okay, so that's my opinion on this matter, but let's hear from you guys in the comments section below to this particular story. This judge has finally been found guilty. Now, she did lose her title as a judge and lost her license, but will she be sent to prison? Let me know your thoughts about that. And also, what do you make of the fact that now the fraud is up to $18 billion in the state of Minnesota? This is just craziness at this point, but give me your thoughts and everything you got in the comments section below. So our next video, yesterday, the House passed a piece of legislation that would criminalize doctors cutting off children's body parts. Essentially, that's exactly what happened. But Democrats did not take this news very lightly. So if you guys missed out on that update, more from yesterday, all you have to do is click on that video because it's coming up right now.